Here's what I want you to get out. Sorry, the camera was acting up. We had worked on this previously. I want you to get it back out. The front page we had already done.
Oh, God.
It's from a while ago. If you need another copy, I might have another copy. But please try to find it.
I still got it.
Yeah, we're going to do the dot part now. Yeah. You guys were supposed to do 1 through 8. Okay, if you have any questions on 1 through 8, I'll answer one question on that. Otherwise, you can watch the video. Right? What? It will be. We're going to go over it. Go now.
I'm going to take the elevator, Mr. Mac.
Do it.
Wait, hold on. Well, I'm not recommend it.
Is he really? Oh, that's
Not a bad idea.
Oh my god!
I used to have the
Why are we
toy
singing
that
How does she expect me to put this in your
It's a very, very special class.
How does she expect me to do that?
Thanks.
Only in
Vibe
6
check.
hours.
Vibe check.
Happens in here.
Well, if I talk to I just have to.
Cindy said
All right, so question on 1 through 8. Question on 1 through 8. If no, then we're going to move on to the next part.
Wait, questions on 1 through 8?
Yeah.
How'd you do the fraction parts of X? How would you do like the fraction parts for number 5?
The slope is 2/3. Oh, I get what you're saying. Okay, let's look at number 5.
I just want to see the slope real quick, G.
Let's look at number 5. So number 5. First of all, our slope for the line that they give us is what? 2/3, 2/3, right? We know that's also can be interpreted as -2/3, right? They're both the same thing. Okay. So if we draw this line on here, we're gonna have a y-intercept at -2. That's there. And a slope of up 2/3. If I go up 2 into the right 3, I get here. I could also do my other slope, which is the same thing, right? Down 2, left 3. They'll get you the same line. We shouldn't have any like bends in this, right? It's all linear. So when I connect those dots, I get this for my line. Again, the more dots you do, the more accurate your line will be. So there's our line. We want to find a line that is parallel to that and goes through -1, 0. -1, 0 is this point right here. So parallel and goes through that point. So I can estimate that. I'm not going to, but I could, right? That's about the same angle and it goes through that point. So it should look like something like that, right? Now, how do we find the equation of that line and how do we get the actual line graphed? Well, we know that if our regular slope is 2/3, what's our, whoops, not perpendicular. What's our parallel slope going to be? 2/3 as well, right? So our equation for our parallel line is going to be y equals 2/3 x. Now we need to figure out what the y-intercept will be. We know it has to go through this point. So visually, one way we can do this is we can start from that point and use our slope, right? And if we go up 2 and over 3, we get to here. So there's our line. Now the question is, where does it cross the y-axis? And if you look really closely, it doesn't cross perfectly, or at least it doesn't appear to be. So we can't just assume. So here's what we're going to do. Another way to think of slope. Instead of thinking it as two separate numbers, rise over run, you can take it all at once. 2/3. Okay? Our slope is 2/3. What does that mean? That means if you start at a point on your line and you go over 1, okay? That means you're going to go up 2/3. Does that make sense? Normally we're thinking, oh, you go up 2 over 3. That works. Another way to think of it is if I go over 1, I go up 2/3. Smell what I'm stepping in? So I go over 1, I'm going to go up 2/3. So that point right there is not a half. It's actually 2/3. That's where it crosses. Okay?
Ding. Did you really just take the elevator?
Now check it out. What if I wanted to know how high this point was right there?
It's not breathing up this way.
If I wanted to know how high this point is, well, I could start from this guy. If I go over 1, I go up 2/3, right? So if I go over 2, how many thirds am I going to go up? 4/3. Do you see how that's at 4/3? It's another way to think about slope. Don't just estimate if it doesn't hit a nice, line. think about where it will be. There's going to be another example that we do this with when we do our perpendicular stuff, but that's how you do it for this, okay? If you don't get it now 100%, you will get it in a second, okay? So there's the equation. There's the line. How do we feel about parallel slope? Same slope, right?
Can you like?
Yeah. Same slope, right? Finding the y-intercept, we have to see where it hits, and sometimes it's not a nice place where it hits, right? Yeah, that's it. Okay, so if you're feeling 50-50 on that, that's okay. We're going to get you 100% of the way after we go to perpendicular. You guys ready?
Okay.
And here we go.
Are we live?
We're recording. I don't think we're live, though. Dang.
We'll do it.
Well,
live.
yes, but actually no.
I get all the notifications when we go live.
Yeah, we didn't go live. I'll upload it later.
Okay.
Depending on how good it is. My 4th hour bombed today. This wasn't my A game.
You weren't on your A game.
Turn the page. I'm going to skip these because we're going to do similar stuff in a second on the perpendicular stuff. Okay? So if you don't understand that, you will understand it in a bit. So we're here now. We're on the side where it has dots and lines and has new directions. Again, I apologize for not having the numbers here. Technically, this is number 9, 10, and 11. Yes, May.
I can't find the Y-intercept
For
for number 7.
number 7?
Yes.
That is because... For the original line, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, the original line I don't need you to find the y-intercept for, because there isn't one. Well, there's infinite y-intercept, I suppose, right? It's constantly hitting the y-axis. But we would talk about y-intercept just being nothing. We don't talk anything about it, okay? It's undefined. The other line would be, I think it intersects at y equals -2. I think the perpendicular line is y equals -2. So the y-intercept would be at -2 for the other line. Anyway, back to here. So look at number 9. It says find the slope and equation of the given line, and then find perpendicular slope to the given line, then find the equation of the perpendicular line that goes to the given point. Graph that line.
Switch.
All right, fun story, guys. True story. There are drugs and there are drugs. Cocaine is and there are drugs. Don't do that. Not even once, okay? Not even once.
What about speed?
Not even once. All right.
How do you know that?
Well, I can make a joke, but I won't. I have a friend that's highly addicted to opioids and a bunch of different drugs, right? Just started out in high school when he had back surgery, and they gave him opioids for like pain, right? And that's how a lot of people get addicted. It's a thing that is affecting a lot of the Midwest at this point, and it's really sad. Also, the people who manufacture those drugs, like meaning medicine, right? Like things that is prescribed to people, knew that it was incredibly addictive and knew how dangerous it could be, but did it anyway.
Shame on them.
Yeah, America.
They give no F's.
All right, number 9. So first, let's find the equation of the black line. What is the slope of the black line? Let's zoom, zoom, zoom. Make my heart go boom, boom, boom. My supernova girl. All right, so how do we find the slope? We picked 2 nice points. Here's a nice point and here's a nice point. You might have chosen other points. We choose 2 nice points and we find out what the rise of a run is, right? We can do that visually. Looks like we're going up 5 here and over 5. So now if I start from the bottom, like Drake, except he didn't. If we start from the bottom point, I'm going to the right 5. Right is plus or minus?
Plus.
Yeah, so I'm going 5 to the right, plus 5. And then I'm going up from there, plus 5. Now, if you started from the top, like Drake did, in reality, you would go down 5, left 5, which means -5, -5, which is going to get you the same slope. Just a different way of thinking about it, right? So our slope is 5 over 5, a rise of 5, a run of 5, which we know, like I said, if you started at the top, can also be written as -5 over -5. Same dumb crap. And we know that those both reduce to 1, right? So we have a slope of 1. You smell what I'm stepping in? Okay, cool. So we know the black equation for that black line is going to be y equals 1x, or just x, right? And now we need to find the y-intercept. Well, where does this cross the y-axis? Where does it cross?
5.
At 5. It's a coincidence that these are all 5. I apologize for that. Usually when I make problems, I try to make it so there are no coincidences, so you don't think, oh, look, they're both 5, so this is a 5, right?
We just have happy little accents.
Yeah, just happy little accents, right? Which, you know, I have to teach them. So here we are.
Damn.
I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about.
Wow.
Okay?
Hey,
Teachable
it
moments.
was either JD or her sister that was.
My dad just learned about the banana.
So,
It's gonna be me.
It's gonna be me.
it hits at 5. So there's a 5 here because it's a y-intercept. Now remember Desmos, right? If there wasn't a 5 here, it'd be a regular line at a certain slope, right? A certain angle, right? And we can adjust that slope and change the angle, but it would always go through the origin, right? This guy then shifts the line up 5. Without anything here, all lines are just going through the origin at different angles, right? You tell me what the slope is, that's the angle. This guy shifts the line up 5. Cool?
Yeah.
That's what it does. That's what it means. So now what we want to do is we want to find a line that is perpendicular to that and goes through this point. Yes.
Can I go back?
Yes, you may, just not in here. So,
Shit's on desk.
well done. All right.
Hey, you made him laugh.
All right, so
It's a good meal
perpendicular slope. If we know our original slope is 5 over 5 or 1, right, what's our perpendicular slope going to be? You flip it and negate it, right? Well, 1 over 1 flipped, did it. You just can't tell, right? And then I negate it. What does it mean to negate?
Make it negative.
That's sort of true, but also not 100% true. I don't say it
Switch
that
the
way.
sign.
Exactly. I don't say it that way because we're not always going to make it negative. If it was negative before, then we'd make it positive, right? Now, negation means multiply by -1, which what does that do? It changes the sign, right?
Yes, sir.
So that's going to be a -1 over 1. I'm going to do that with a minus sign on the outside. Doesn't matter if you put it in the top or the bottom. Just don't do it in both spots, right? It's all good. Which means our equation for our perpendicular line, a perpendicular line equation, is going to be y equals -1x. And now we need to find where the y-intercept would be. Well, how do we do that? Well, if I didn't have a point that I needed this to go through, there are lots of lines I could draw that would hit this at 90, right? I could draw lots of lines that would hit it at 90. But I want a specific line, a line that hits it at 90 and goes through there, and there's only one line that does that. Okay? So we will have a specific equation. We're going to use our slope from this dot to find out what that line is. So I go down 1 over 1, right? Schlaffer, you just want an extra copy?
No, I just had to staple and hole punch all my papers. I'll take that one when you're done with it.
All right, so down 1 over 1. We can also think of this as up 1, back 1, right? And that's going to actually show us where we hit the y-axis. It also shows us where we intersect with our line. It hits at a really nice point. Wow. Wow.
Quality.
Wow. Wow.
I destroyed you and
Wow.
tell Mr. Mac that.
All right, so where does it hit?
Oh, you made the one.
Where does it hit the y-axis?
Right there.
It's at Juan. Let's break it down. So are we cool with finding the slope of the original line? Pick 2 points, figure it out. Make sure those points are nice. They're not, they're on the crosshatches there, and they're not fractions. There's your slope. Find the y-intercept where it crosses, right? Are we cool with doing perpendicular slope, flip and negate?
Hey, does that say -5 up top, right there?
Yeah, it does. So -5 over -5 is another way to think about that, right? We can go up 5 over 5 or up 5 or down 5, back 5. Same dumb crap. Seen it now? Awesome. Cool. So, number 10. If you only think about y equals mx plus b, you're going to get lost on this. That's why calc students struggle with stuff like this. And again, I say calc students because I used to teach calc students that would struggle with this stuff. Okay? And it wasn't because they weren't smart, right? By definition, they're calc. They must be smart, right? School working for them. No, they just didn't understand what it meant. You guys are going to have me as a teacher, which means you're going to think about what this stuff means. Not just going to go, okay, I know the formula, I'll memorize it, right? So while, yes, we do need the y equals mx plus b of this equation, this line right here, turns out there isn't going to be one for it. And here's why. A line is a collection of all the points, right, that fit a certain rule, a relationship between x and y. So let's see what these points have in common. I'm going to pick a bunch of random points. Looks like they all have 7 comma something in common. So 7 comma 1, 7 comma 4 there. That looks like 7 comma 8. But look what they all have in common. X is always 7, right? So the equation of that line is x is 7. There is no relationship between x and y here. X is always 7, y is whatever it wants, right? Y does anything it wants to do. Before, on the last one, we did have a relationship between x and y, right? It's the negative version of x plus 1. That's what y is. They had a relationship, right? Here, x does one thing. It's 7. Y, who knows? So we have no information about y. We only have information about x. So we have no y equals mx plus b. Another way to think about this is we have vertical slope here. So if I pick 2 points, let's pick these two. What's our rise between these 2 points?
0. Oh, wait. 1.
Our rise?
4.
4. We went up 4. Did we go over any?
No.
No. So our slope for that would be 4 over 0. Now, you know dividing by 0 breaks math. So this slope we call undefined, because if we defined it to be a number, like equals 0 or equals some number, we made up our own number, it would actually break math, because we could prove anything equals anything,
Like
right?
literally breaks math.
It would. It would make numbers like, you could prove that 4 equals 3. Do you see how that would break everything down, right? And so that we have to say, look, that must just not work with how math works, so we have to call it undefined, right? So that's an undefined slope. It's vertical slope, right? So when we say this is vertical slope in 4 over 0, we know that we can't have an m here, because m is undefined. So how can I write y equals mx plus b if m is undefined, right? I can't even plug in 0 for m, because 0 is defined. 0 is a number, right? It breaks everything.
Get rid of the M.
So this isn't possible. We can't even just get rid of it. Getting rid of the m would mean that m is 0. And 0 is a number. That's not undefined. That's different. That would leave us with y equals b, which can be a thing, right? We're going to see that in a second. It just breaks it. We can't have a y equals mx plus b for this, because it is undefined. M is undefined. Cannot exist. Cannot be talked about in that regard. Now, we need a line that's perpendicular to this. So if we have a perfectly vertical line, what's our perpendicular line going to be?
Horizontal.
Perfectly horizontal, right? So that's really easy to draw through this point. I'll do that now. Done. Now the question is, what's the equation of that line going to be? And that's the question that most of my calc students would struggle with. You guys are not going to. Because you know a line is a collection of points that represent, a relationship between x and y. So what is common between all these points here? What's their relationship?
The y is always going to equal -2.
Exactly. Every one of these coordinates is some x, comma -2. Some x, comma -2, right? So we know that y is always -2. So the equation is y equals -2. X can be anything. Now, another way to think about this. This one can have a y equals mx plus b. If you pick 2 points, how much do we rise between these two?
0.
0. So we have a slope of 0 over, how much did I go to the right between these two?
2.
0 over 2 is defined. It's defined as 0. Anything, 0 divided by anything is 0. Think of it this way. I have 0 things, 2 friends. How much does everybody get? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. You lose! Right? Willy Wonka, Gene Wilder.
I just drew a perfectly straight line.
No, okay. So,
That's crazy.
slope is 0 for this one. That's our perpendicular slope. So if we plug that into the y equals mx plus b,
That's crazy.
m is 0. And so 0 times anything is what?
0.
So we get y equals 0 plus b, which is b. Well, what is our y-intercept here?
-2.
Do you see what I'm saying? It also pops up that way, doesn't it?
Okay.
If you didn't think about, okay, what all these points have in common, you could figure out, oh, look, slope is 0, plug in 0 for m. Everything goes away except b. What is b, the y-intercept? Here's the y-intercept at -2. They get you the same answer. Now, this one, this vertical line here, like May mentioned on the last one that we were looking at that was vertical real briefly, doesn't have a y-intercept. This line right here doesn't ever hit the y-axis, does it? Y-axis is over here. It doesn't even hit it at 0, right? 0 is a point that it could hit the y-axis at. So we have no way to write a y equals mx plus b for this equation. It just does not exist. Cool.
Well, why not?
Look at number 11.
Where are your gods now?
I know, I have lots of good quotes. I know.
I know. I follow your meme page.
That's right. Where's my meme today? I checked at lunch. It wasn't posted yet.
You follow your own meme.
Of course I follow my own meme page.
I would too.
I'm all about that clout, right?
I'm all about that.
I I don't make
I'm gonna buy you cloud goggles now just to wear them.
That's right. I want a shirt that says Savage, and I need clout goggles.
No, you gotta get a Thrasher tee.
Do not get him a thrash.
Get him a thrash.
Every time I see one of those, I go, "Oh, you're edgy." Okay. All right. So,
Hell, you smoke too.
gotcha. All right. So we're gonna find the slope of the black line here. Okay. Like I also listen to Fall Out Boy. All right.
Like I also.
You have a
Wait,
weak
you're edgy?
nicotine addiction.
What I think is so funny is that you guys listen to the same bands that I did in high school, which is like forever ago. I mean, I'm not that old, but like
Yeah.
when I was in high school, I did not listen to the bands that my parents listened to in high school. You know what I mean? Or like kids that were 10 years or 15 years older than I. Like things had changed. But you guys still listen to Green Day. You still listen to Fall Out Boy. You still listen to The Killers, right? Like it's all the same. Now you've in Taylor Swift, right? Like it's all the same, just later in their careers. Why don't you guys come up with your own music? I don't get this, right?
Because our
It's
generation
the
of
music
is-
that
XX Tentacion. All right, so
Oh,
Yeah, if we had our own generation of music, there would be way more success.
yikes, yikes. Oh yeah, you guys came up with Juice World, right?
Yeah.
All right, so
His world.
nothing wrong with okay. So
Have you talked to McCartney about his sound garage?
Oh, Lil Tree.
you are the second person to mention that today. I gotta check this out.
Tony with the Mac and
McCartney's
Lil
brother,
Tree.
yeah.
Send me a link. Get me the
Tony
link.
with the Mac.
Okay.
Get it.
I got you on McCartney's brother.
Nice. All right. So here's the deal. We need to find the slope of this line. So I picked 2 nice points. I'm gonna figure out how far they are apart vertically and horizontally.
Please play. I will pay you money if you play Lil Tree.
You want to start at the top or the bottom?
What? Bottom.
The bottom, just like Drake, but not really. Okay, so we start at the bottom. If I go from there, I'm going to the left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if I'm going to the left 5, is that negative or positive?
Negative.
Negative, so we're going -5. And then I go up from there 2, so that's a positive 2. So our rise for this was 2, and our run was -5. So the slope of the black line is 2 over -5. Now there's another way to think of that, right? We could have started from the top. We could have gone down 2 over 5, and so we would have gotten a slope like this. It's good to know both ways. Now neither of those are reducible, right? That's as low as we can get it. We can't reduce that any further, so let's call it a day. We know that the black line is going to have a slope of, I'm going to put a minus sign out here. Fence it on this. Okay, are we good?
Now they listen to
-2/5. X, don't forget about your X's. Stalk them on Instagram, right? You will make that mistake on the quiz. You'll forget to write the X, okay? We need to figure out what the Y-intercept is. Now, here is the problem. We've encountered this once before. We've been here before. It hits at a weird spot, doesn't it?
What do you mean?
Uh-huh.
Brand new?
We cannot assume that's a half, because turns out it ain't. Our slope is -2/5. So that means when we go to the right 1, we go down 2/5. You dig it?
What?
It's a different way to think of slope. Think of it all as one number instead of 2 separate ones. Look up here. Instead of thinking it as rise over run, take it all at once. -2/5, okay? When we go over 1, we go down 2/5. That checks out.
So you go over 1, you go down 2/5.
If I go over 2, how many fifths do I go down?
3.
4/5.
Okay.
Right, double that, right? It's okay. So again, if I go over 1, I go down 2/5. If I go over 2, I go down 4/5. If I go over 3, I go down 6/5.
So how does that make sense? I don't know.
If I go over 4, I go down 8/5. Let's break it down. Eyes up here. Close your eyes. Close your eyes. Close your eyes. Shut
I'm
up.
not closing my eyes.
Shut up. Close your eyes. Don't have to close your eyes. Just shut up for 5 seconds. Okay, bring it back in. Look at this number as a whole number. Don't think of it as like 2 over 2, rise 2 and run 5. Think of it as a number, -2/5. Okay. Another way to think about this is that when we go over 1, we go down 2/5. That checks out. If I go over 2, then I've gone down 4/5. See what I'm saying? If I go over 3, I've gone down 6/5. If I go over 4, I've gone down 8/5. So notice I started at a height of 4, right? And I went down 8/5. So where do I end up now? Well, that's a math problem. 4 minus 8/5 is where I end up, right? We need comedy nomies. No yawning in math class! How many fifths are in the number 4? Better question. How many fifths are in the number 1?
5.
5 fifths. How many fifths are in the number 2?
2.
10 fifths.
Wait,
How many fifths are in the number 3?
15.
15 fifths.
I'm smelling what
How
you're
many
saying.
fifths are in the number 4?
20.
20 fifths. Jazz hands, right? So another way to think of this
Wait a minute.
is that we didn't change the problem. We just wrote it in a different way. We changed our perspective. And this is a more helpful perspective because now I've got 20 fifths and we're taking away 8 fifths. How many fifths do I have left over? 12 fifths.
What's wrong with me?
It's all right, it
You
happens.
like semi-blew my brain.
I know.
Is this?
Can we like close our eyes? for-
So the height that we are now at, right? We started at 4 and we walked down 8 fifths. We're now at 12 fifths. That's what that dot is. So our y-intercept is 12 fifths. 12 fifths.
Negative 2 fifths. Oh, plus.
That was our slope. Are you smelling what I'm stepping in?
No.
You know what I'm smelling? I'm smelling some Tony with the
Okay? Let me walk you through it again. So stop writing stuff down. Here's how I figured out where that point is. I know that this guy is at 4, right? A height of 4.
Yes.
So if I go over 1, I go down 2 fifths. That's my slope, right? 2 fifths, negative 2 fifths. So if I go over 2, I went down 4 fifths. If I go over 3, I went down 6 fifths. 4, I went down 8 fifths. So I traveled minus 8 fifths here. So whatever 4 minus 8 fifths is, that's where that dot is on the y-axis, our y-intercept. So to figure out 4 minus 8 fifths, I did this. I got common denominators and I found it out. Ignore the math, just trust me that it is. Do you see how I got that and why we did what we did?
The math is a monstrous.
Okay? The calculation doesn't matter. We can talk about how to get common denominators later. Do you see why I did what I did to figure that out? And the key behind that. If I move over 1, that means I go down 2 fifths. It's another way to think of slope. If I move like here, if I move over 1, I go up 1, right? Over here, if I move over 1, I go up 2/3. Look at this line. If I move over 1, I go up 2/3. Do you see it? How it's not perfectly 1 up? Over 1 up 2/3. Over 2 up 4/3. A little bit over 1. We've been doing it the whole time. Do you feel better? I don't need 100, but better?
I'm
Okay.
walking down the trail, but I haven't made it to the end yet.
Hell yeah!
You're playing Tony with the Mac.
That is Tony.
No one.
Yeah, that is Tony with the Mac.
Turn the page.
Turn that off.
I'm not bad.
He thinks his favorite.
The rest of these are on your own.
That's what his problem is.
Oh, really?
Like, what about the other line?
Oh, you're right. We didn't finish 11. I knew it felt like we got done early. All right, number 11.
Yeah.
Back to it. We have to find the line that's perpendicular to it. So if our original slope was negative 2 fifths, what's our perpendicular slope going to be?
2 fifths. 2 over negative fifths. No?
We flip and change the sign. Flip it first.
5
halves. Is it going to be positive or negative?
Positive.
Positive. We were negative. We made it positive. Flip and change the sign. So we know our line, our perpendicular line, is going to be y equals 5 halves x. Don't lose your x's. Stalk them on Instagram. And now we need to figure out where the y-intercept is. This is not hard. This is the easier part. Here's the point they want us to go through. So I'm going to start there and use my slope to find another point and then draw my line. I go up 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 over 2. I'm going to do it again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 over 2. Whoops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 over 2. Here we are. All right, I've drawn my line. We need the y-intercept. Where does our line cross the y-axis?
At the one point.
Exactly. I did misdirection. I drew your attention up here, literally drew it. And I drew you away from the point they gave us, which is literally the y-intercept. Because if you're looking up here like, wait a minute, it never hits it. Or maybe you'd say 2, because you screw up the x and y axis. It hits it here. I don't know why that works, but it does every year.
It's where?
It does every year.
Probably because we're
It's
too
right
busy
here.
trying to focus on what
I
you're
know.
teaching.
Isn't it amazing? Right? I'm making you watch my hand over here while I'm doing the trick here, right? So it hits at what number? Negative 5. So the y-intercept for that one is easy, minus 5.
Damn.
Wait, so is this the rest of this just the same as what we did?
Do the rest for homework. Major super quiz on Friday.
Major super quiz.
It's like the super volcano, but in math class.
Aloha Tuesday.
So I'm a fail. That's what. Yeah, so I'm a fail. That's what.
Honolulu Runners. That's dope.
Mr. Max, are you gonna come to the game Saturday?
cool. Probably not.
I'm working. I got my.
No one asked.
I got swimming and then work.
That's what I want to say to every student ever.
Even
Do it.
You gonna be in here? You gonna be in here or no? Would you like to be?
I guess.
Yeah. You're off today. Why?
What?
You're off today.
Because you played that sad song at the
Is that
start.
why?
No.
Okay. Nice boots.
Whoa! You want problems with
That's a tardy slip.
I know. 9? 10. 10. I am living in the past.
10:29.
Homeroom. HR. Whoops, that doesn't need a slash. Here you are. Yeah. You want to be there or no? Okay. See you then, bud.
You got a bunch of depressed ass kids in your class.
Why is that? Why? I mean, yeah, that's high
I
school.
mean, I have no desire
Yeah.
to, but like,
Yeah, that happens. But you know what?
shit
Part of
happens.
it does, and I'm here to help. I am.
You can't fix everyone, Matt.
You can, but I will try.